On the first video in this series, I got a comment from somebody saying, "Man, this really makes me wish I had friends to play D&D with." And this comment made me so sad. I wish everybody gets to play D&D and enjoy it with people. Now, I could make a video on 3 ways to get into D&D, but isn't D&D about storytelling? Plus, check out your local game store, look for groups online, and mention it to people around you. List video done. I thought the more interesting thing to do is talk a little bit about my story, how I got into D&D, because it hasn't been that long ago, to be honest. And hopefully that casts a light on your journey to finding other players. To be clear, I am a kid of the 80s and no stranger to RPGs, but I never played D&D growing up. My jam was much more books and later Diablo, plus a very brief introduction into DSA. But then more and more over time, RPGs were video games for me. It wasn't a thing to play with other people. Until, of course, Stranger Things rolls around, and the resurgence of board games happened. So we did buy the starter kit, but I just sat there, because we opened the box and genuinely were like, where's the game? I probably flipped through the book and thought, oh man, that's way too much to read and we don't have the time for that. But there were loads of people rediscovering D&D at the time. And at some point, I see Stephen Colbert on YouTube playing D&D with some guy. Well, that looked fun, and we got into Critical Role, of course, but we still had no one to play with or a real understanding of the rules. But the desire to play was bigger than ever. And so we looked online if anyone in our area is doing anything, and someone did. Someone put a thing on Meetup for people who want to get into D&D. Jackpot. There were about 10, maybe 15 people, and we made smaller groups and set a date for our first game. A week later, we met in a bar with a couple strangers, and the guy who hosted the meetup ran a 3.5 one-shot for us. Then scheduling got harder and things kind of fizzled out, but the floodgates were open. Soon after, we found an online forum for our area that organized weekly games in a bar. Very casual, very beginner-friendly, and I ended up with so many level 1 characters, it's kind of hard to remember. But now that we have played a couple games, we felt comfortable mentioning it to friends and family around us. And some were curious about it too. So we finally reopened the starter kit again, and over the holidays we played a single session with the family. And in January 2020, we started the Dragon of Icespire Peak with my wife and a couple friends and friends of friends. So that's where we ended up with an elf monk, a half elf rogue, a half orc druid, and an elf sorcerer. Plus one DM, of course, and that DM was me. We graduated from there to Icewind Dale, and believe me, DMing is fun. But this whole time I wanted to be a character. I wanted to experience the world as a player. Luckily for me, on the aforementioned forum, someone was starting a new campaign and was looking for players, something that everybody dreams of. So of course I signed up for that, playing again in the same bar where I first played my first 3.5 game, sitting there with a bunch of strangers. And that is when I got to jump into being Shark, the Vidalcan hybrid Rune Knight fighter. And it's been so much fun getting to play the game from that perspective, getting to explore myself and the character, and getting to know strangers by playing D&D. Now, to return the favors I've gotten before, I wanted to host a meetup myself. I wanted to host a game for beginners, and that was really fun, really exciting, and people enjoyed it. I opened up a Discord last year to build a shared campaign. And finally, one of my long-term players, Peter, ran a game for us. But more on that soon. The bottom line is, if you want to play D&D, keep your eyes and ears open. And don't be afraid to play with strangers. Because in the end, isn't that how every campaign starts, as Strangers in a Tavern. With that, I'll talk to you tomorrow.